There's a family that built $4 million across 30 years. Real estate, a business, offshore accounts, 6 different advisors managing pieces of a puzzle that only the patriarch understood. He dies at 68. And within 11 years, his grandchildren are applying for student loans. 3 miles away, a retired teacher and her husband, never earned more than $90,000 combined, leave their 2 kids a paid-off house, $380,000 in index funds, and a savings account with clear instructions. 20 years later, that modest wealth is still there, quietly growing. This isn't an accident, and it isn't luck. It's one of the most uncomfortable truths in personal finance, that generational wealth doesn't always favor the family that earned the most. Sometimes, it quietly protects the family that understood something that money alone can't buy. And if you've ever assumed that more assets automatically means more financial security for the people you love, what you're about to hear will rearrange that assumption completely. Here's what the research actually shows, and almost nobody talks about this. Studies tracking wealthy families across generations found that 70% lose their wealth by the second generation. 90% by the third. Those are staggering numbers. But here's the part that gets buried: the middle-class families in those same studies. Many of them, the ones with modest but organized assets, preserved and even grew their wealth across those same generations. So why do wealthy families lose wealth at a rate that should be statistically impossible, while families with a fraction of those resources quietly outlast them? The answer isn't about returns. It's not about market timing. It's about something hiding in plain sight, and it starts with what happens the moment complexity enters a household. Think of a family's wealth like a machine. A simple machine, 1 gear, 1 lever, anyone can operate it. Anyone can fix it when something breaks. But what happens when you keep adding gears? More levers, more moving parts, more ways for things to fail silently, invisibly, while the machine appears to still be running. Wealthy families almost always accumulate what financial planners call complex asset structures: multiple properties in different states, business partnerships with overlapping ownership, alternative investments in private equity, offshore accounts that require specialists to manage. Each one individually is a decision that made sense at the time. Together, they build a machine that only one person fully understands: the person who built it. And when that person is gone, their heirs don't inherit wealth. They inherit a labyrinth. This is what researchers call wealth fragmentation, and it's the first invisible mechanism destroying high-net-worth families from the inside. Assets exist, but heirs can't access them efficiently. Advisors, sometimes with conflicting interests, manage pieces in isolation. Fees accumulate, tax deadlines get missed. Properties sit vacant while the carrying costs quietly drain capital. And slowly, without anyone making a single catastrophic decision, a complex empire dissolves into nothing. Not in a day, over years, like a slow leak in a pipe hidden inside the wall. Middle-class families, almost by necessity, build the opposite: a paid-off home, a handful of index funds, a savings account, not because they lacked ambition, but because their resources demanded clarity. And that clarity, it transfers. When they're gone, their heirs don't need a team of professionals to understand what they inherited. They understand it in 20 minutes. The machine has 1 gear, and it keeps running. But there's a second mechanism, and this one is harder to talk about because it involves something every parent believes they're doing right. When you raise children inside wealth, you naturally want to protect them from the stress you work to eliminate. You send them to the best schools. You handle the finances so they don't have to worry. You absorb the hard decisions so they can focus on living well. It feels like a gift. Research tells a different story. Studies show that 60% of children from high-net-worth families have no idea of their family's actual net worth or how the assets are structured. When those children inherit suddenly, unexpectedly, they face an overwhelming combination of complexity and responsibility they were never prepared for. They make expensive mistakes, not because they're careless, but because nobody ever showed them the machine. They become dependent on advisors who may not always act in their interest. They liquidate assets at the wrong time to cover decisions they don't fully understand. Capital that should have lasted generations gets depleted within a decade, not through greed. through ignorance that was, ironically, created by love. Middle-class children experience something almost entirely different. They grow up hearing about the mortgage. They know what groceries cost, what a tight month feels like, how hard it was to build a small emergency fund. When they inherit a modest amount, that inheritance feels sacred. They've seen what it took to build it. They treat it with a precision and caution that comes only from having lived close to its absence. The families protecting generational wealth most effectively aren't doing it through complex strategies. They're doing it through something far simpler and far more transferable. Here's where this gets genuinely uncomfortable. The third mechanism is one that affects families at every wealth level, but hits hardest at the top. It's lifestyle inflation. And at scale, it becomes a machine that devours capital faster than almost any market downturn could. A wealthy family normalizes expensive living, private schools, luxury travel, multiple properties. Premium everything because they can, and because it's become the baseline their children expect. And for as long as the income stream supporting that lifestyle continues, it's sustainable. But income streams end, businesses get sold, the primary earner dies, the market shifts. And suddenly, a family that built $3 million faces a brutal arithmetic problem. The lifestyle they've normalized requires $400,000 a year to maintain. The portfolio, managed conservatively, generates $120,000. Most families in that position don't dramatically downsize. They liquidate. They sell the vacation property to fund private school tuition. They tap principal to avoid a conversation about expectations. They choose appearance over arithmetic, and within 15 years, the capital base that should have outlasted generations is gone. Spent not on emergencies, but on maintaining a life that was only ever sustainable during peak earning years. Middle-class families, almost invisibly, carry a structural advantage here. They built their life inside a budget that their assets can sustain indefinitely. When income drops, when transitions happen, their lifestyle doesn't require liquidation to survive. They can absorb the shock. They have margin, not because they earned more. Because they never built a life that required more than they actually had. That behavioral gap, quiet, invisible, rarely discussed in wealth preservation strategies, is one of the most powerful forces in long-term financial security. And most families at the top of the wealth scale never even see it until it's too late. So what does all of this actually mean for you? Whether you're building wealth right now or protecting what you've already built, these three mechanisms don't just apply to the families in those studies. They apply to any household where complexity is growing faster than the systems to manage it, where children are being shielded from financial reality instead of being included in it, where lifestyle has drifted above what the underlying assets can permanently sustain. The families that break the generational loss pattern, the ones in the 10% that actually preserve wealth across multiple generations, don't do it by earning more. They do it by doing something the wealthiest families consistently fail to do. They build for transferability over impressiveness. Simple asset structures that anyone in the family can understand and manage. Transparent conversations about money starting early. A lifestyle deliberately sized to what the capital can permanently support, not what the peak earning years could temporarily afford. This is what researchers call strategic simplification. And it's borrowed almost entirely from the behavioral habits of families who never had enough wealth to afford the complexity that destroys it. The most powerful wealth preservation strategy available to any family right now isn't a new investment product. It isn't a better advisor. It's the same thing that kept a retired teacher's modest savings intact for 2 generations across 3 miles from a crumbling $4 million empire. Clarity, simplicity, and the courage to build something your children can actually hold. If you want to protect what you're building for the people you love, start with one question. If you were gone tomorrow, could the people you're leaving this to manage it without you? If the answer is anything other than an immediate yes, that's the work. Not more investments, not more complexity, more clarity. That's what real financial security looks like across generations, and it doesn't require millions to build it. If this gave you something to think about, leave a comment with the one thing you're going to simplify. Subscribe for more on building financial protection that actually lasts.